Today we are going to be talking about developmental psychology. You may be wondering, what exactly is developmental psychology? Well, it is the study of age-related changes in behavior and mental processes from conception until death. There are two ways on studying development. You have the nature perspective and you have the nurture perspective. The nature perspective is going to say they're going to pay close attention to the role of maturation, which is a sequence of genetically programmed processes of growth and development that occur over time. They're also going to pay close attention to the role of critical periods, which is a certain time of sensitivity to age-related learning that shapes the capacity for future cognitive developments. The nurture perspective is going to say that development occurs due to learning and personal experience. There are going to be two approaches to development. There is the continuity approach and the discontinuity approach. The psychologists who take the continuity approach are going to say that development occurs as knowledge, new knowledge, new abilities, all that is going to be earned at a gradual pace. And the discontinuity approach is going to say that that's not how it works, that development occurs through distinct stages. And your stage theorists are the ones who are going to pay close attention to critical periods. So stay tuned as we talk about some of those people later, such as Jean Piaget and Erik Erikson. Don't forget about Kohler. Now we're going to be talking about research methods. There are two that I'm going to be focusing on, which include the longitudinal method and the cross-sectional method. The longitudinal method takes a single individual or a group of individuals and it measures them over an extensive period of time. This is to provide in-depth information about age changes. However, there are many downsides to this method, such as the fact that it's time-consuming, it costs lots of money, and it usually consists of a small sample, so it can't be too accounted toward the whole population. Of course, you're gonna have to do many trials. Now I'm going to be talking about the cross-sectional method, which takes a large group of individuals of various ages and they're going to measure them at a singular point in time. This is to provide information about the age differences. However, results are they're hard to look at because it's hard to tell whether they're due to the fact that the cohorts or the different age groups grew up in different historical periods. So it's hard to tell if the results are due to age effects or if they're due to cohort effects. Now we're going to be talking about development from the prenatal period to development during infancy. The prenatal period begins with conception and it ends 9 months later with birth. During the first 10 days of conception, the fertilized egg or the zygote becomes an embryo, and during the embryonic stage, cells are going to differentiate and they're going to divide into organ systems. About 8 weeks later, the embryo is going to develop into a fetus, and during the fetal stage, neural cells are being produced at the astounding rate of 250,000 per minute, which is pretty fascinating. It's crazy. Now we're going to be talking about tertogens as well. I'm just gonna give a quick summary of it. Basically, so whenever the doctor tells an expected mother, that she can't smoke, she can't drink when she's pregnant because it's going to harm the fetus. And those substances are known as tertogens. And if induced or contracted by the mother, it's going to harm the baby, basically. Now I'm going to be talking about the neonatal stage or the newborn stage, which is basically this lasts from birth until 1 month of age. Newborns are going to be sensitive to sweet, bitter, and I believe it's salty taste. They're going to be sensitive to sweet, bitter, and salty taste. they're equipped with certain behavioral reflexes in order to help them to survive, such as the grasping reflex, which enables them to cling on to their mother or father, the postural reflex, which enables them to sit without support. Sit with support, not without support. Your baby would just fall down if it was sitting without support. um, but yeah, so the postural reflex is whenever it enables the baby to sit with support. And the rooting reflex is whenever a source of stimulation will like touch the baby is going to turn his or her head toward that source of stimulation and open their mouth. So like imagine you stroke the baby's face. The baby's going to turn toward you and open their mouth. Now we're going to be talking about development during infancy, which the brain, it pays attention to how like the brain and the nervous system is developing rapidly and all that. And the reason that people cannot remember events when they were an infant is because many brain circuits were not fully like put together yet. They weren't fully connected at the time, so you don't remember many things that happened when you were an infant. Now I'm going to discuss the different motor development in infancy, which it provides a pretty good illustration of the maturation process. So infants will typically begin to roll over at, I think, 5.5 months. Yeah, they begin to roll over at 5.5 months, and they can sit alone. No, okay, I'm sorry. They roll over at 3 months. They can sit alone at 5.5 months. They can stand alone at 11.5 months. And they're able to walk at 12 months or 1 year. And they're able to climb up steps on their own by 17 months. So now I'm going to be talking about language development. Noam Chomsky and many other linguists believed that every child had the innate ability to learn language. And parents in every culture are going to use distinctive pronunciation of simplified words to encourage development. This is known as motherese or baby talk, and you might hear words such as bye-bye or night-night to encourage development. And infants follow this pattern of language development that begins with cooing, and then by about 9 months of age, they're going to start babbling in their native language. By their first birthday, they're going to delight their parents by saying mama or dada or some other word. And after saying their first words, they are soon going to start making short sentences with 2 words, such as dada, go, and doggy, here. And by the time an infant is about 3 years of age, their vocabulary is about roughly 3,000 words. Now I'm going to be talking about Mary Ainsworth and attachment, or the strange situation. So attachment is the affection, the bond of affection between a child and their parent or their caregiver. And so psychologists distinguish between 2 kinds of attachment. One being securely attached, and the other being insecurely attached. Securely attached infants, a securely attached bond forms whenever the parent or the caregiver is being responsive and warm to their child, and they're making sure that the infant's needs are met. An insecure attachment forms whenever these needs are not met, and the parents are being inconsistent and they're kind of ignoring the infant. Maybe they're just not meeting the needs. So Mary Ainsworth is a developmental psychologist that is going to perform an experiment where she places an infant and their mother in a room with some toys. So they're going to be in there, put in the room, and then a strange person, just a random person, is going to come in, and a few minutes later the mother is going to leave. And they repeat this process of the mother's going to return a few minutes later, and then she's going to leave again, and they're going to repeat that a few times. What was observed was that securely attached infants are going to use their mother leaving as a secure base, and they're going to go and explore the room. They react pretty positively, Insecurely attached infants, they displayed negative emotions whenever the mother left. They were less likely to explore the room. They were displaying negative emotions. They did not respond well. Um, Current research has showed that the securely attached infants and insecurely attached infants, it can affect them later on in life. Like securely attached infants usually are going to be more, they're going to form good social relationships, they're going to do well in school. And insecurely attached infants, well, they can display an insatiable need for affection, attention, and they typically form shallow relationships as well, and that's about it. Now I'm going to be talking about Harry Harlow and contact comfort. So back in the 1940s and 50s, it was widely believed that children went with whoever provided them with nourishment. It completely ignored contact comfort, the theory of contact comfort. So Harry Harlow is going to take some orphaned baby monkeys, and so he's going to put them in a room with two fake monkey mothers, I guess you could say, and one of them is going to provide a soft terry cloth. It's going to be the cloth mother. The other mother is going to be a wire mother that has a nursing bottle. The cloth mother does not have a nursing bottle, it just has a soft terry cloth. And in frightening situations, it was observed that the monkeys went to the mother with the soft terry cloth, even though the wired mother provided a nursing bottle. Harlow concluded that the reassurance that came from physical touch from a parent or caregiver is going to play a key role in healthy physical development and normal socialization, normal social development. Now I'm going to be talking about Jean Piaget's theory of cognitive development. Jean Piaget was a Swiss psychologist, and his theory provided a lot of information on how the mind develops. And basically, he's going to say that children are not less intelligent than adults, they simply think differently. So the first stage in his four-stage theory is the sensory motor stage, which is from birth until significant language acquisition, which is at about age 2. And infants, they're going to use their senses and their motor skills to develop new schemas. A schema is basically a way of organizing and interpreting information, such as the way that children think of Santa Claus. That's a schema. That's an existing schema of how it's of Santa being an old man that develops that sends presents to all good kids and such, and he wears a red suit. That's an example of a schema. And during this stage, children lack object permanence, which is the idea that an object is still there even though it may be out of sight, out of touch, or out of hearing. And so let's say a ball rolls under a bed or something. So prior to age 2, the child is not, once it's out of sight, it's out of mind. It's no longer in their head anymore. But by age 2, they're able to form mental representations of it. So they're able, once the ball rolls under the bed now, they know that it's still there. So they're still gonna go look for it. Now I'm going to be talking about the second stage, which is the pre-operational stage. Keep in mind that operations in Piaget's theory was just another way of saying logical mental activities or processes. So basically, the stage can also be known as the pre-logical stage. It lasted from age 2 until age 7, and it consisted of egocentrism, symbolic thought, animistic thinking, irreversibility, and centration. So symbolic thought is using words, images, symbols to mentally represent the world. So think about how a child has a toy steering wheel and they're going to mimic their parents. that is one way of using their symbolic thought to represent the world by using their little toy steering wheel. And now I'm going to be talking about egocentrism, which you may think that it's selfish thought, but in this theory, it is not known as that necessarily. It's more so that the child will not know any other perspective other than their own. So let's say that it's grandpa's birthday and it's a little girl wants to give him a present. She's going to think that a Barbie doll would be a wonderful present for him because that's exactly what she wants, right? And she doesn't see any other perspectives. She only sees her own. So that's known as egocentrism, and most children are going to have that during this stage. And now I'm going to be talking about animistic thinking, which is the idea that inanimate objects have feelings. So a child might say, the sun is happy today, or the flowers are sad because they haven't been watered. Now, irreversibility is the failure to reverse a certain event. So let's say that there's Susan and Jack have a cookie. Susan is going to break her cookie into pieces, and she's going to say, I have more cookies than you know, Jack. And Jack, not knowing that that cookie, the broken pieces, has the same volume as his cookie, he's going to cry because he's going to think that she has more. He can't reverse that the fact that she broke the cookie and put the pieces back together. He can't think that that cookie is the same size as his. Now I'm going to be talking about centration, which is very similar. It's not reversing an event, but it's more so focusing on the fact that a child can only focus on one thing at a time. So let's say, like, why can Jack not comprehend that the broken cookie has the same volume as his cookie? Because he's too focused on the number of pieces that her cookie was broken into. Meanwhile, his cookie is just one, and she might have like 10 little pieces, but he can't process that those little pieces form up his singular cookie. Like, he just thinks, oh no, she has more. So it's centration is just going to be the fact that he's focusing on one thing, which is the fact, oh, there's more pieces. Oh, I only have one. So that's an example. And now I'm going to be talking about the concrete operational stage, which lasts from age 7 until age 11. This is whenever the child starts to have a little bit more of, like, so they now have conservation. Sorry, I was thinking about it. They now have conservation, which is the idea that, so you know how before Jack couldn't realize that, oh, those little broken pieces of the cookie, same thing as my cookie. Well, now let's say Jack has now hit the concrete operational stage. So now he's going to notice that all those little pieces, they have the same volume as his cookie. Like, he's going to be able to say that, oh, that cookie has the same volume as mine. It's the exact same. She doesn't have more than I do. It's just broken up. He can place those things back together now. And so that's an example of that. Another example would be, let's say you have a glass of water and it's a wide glass, but you have a skinny glass that has the same volume as the other glass, and let's say you pour that short glass into there and it looks like it's more, but in reality it's not. The child is now going to notice that, oh, they have the same volume, they don't have more than me, it's the same, right? So that's what conservation is going to say. And now I'm going to be talking about the last stage, which is the formal operational stage, and this stage lasts from adolescence until adulthood. This is whenever thoughts, they're now able to be abstract. You're now able to have abstract thoughts and you can represent the world, like, abstractly, basically. So you're not going to say something back in the, like, concrete operational stage. You don't have that thinking still yet. You're still going to say, let's say, oh, stealing is bad because it's bad, it's stealing. But Now, the formal operational you might say maybe it's not as bad as you think, because maybe like they had a dire need for it or something. Maybe like they were starving, they were hungry, and they really needed that food, or something bad would have happened. So now they can explain more like thoroughly and deeply. So that's going to be your formal operational stage. So now I'm going to be talking about the criticisms of Piaget's theory. And although contemporary developmental psychologists are going to still say that infants, children, and adults, they all have different cognitive abilities, they're going to challenge and refine some of the aspects of his theory. And so an example would be Rene Balagueron. They're going to do a visual, they're going to do an experiment and basically see that children as young as 2.5 months of age can display object permanence. So, which was a lot different from Piaget's theory, because he said that at 2 years they develop object permanence, which is significantly later. And another example would be Lev Vygotsky. He's a Russian psychologist, and he's going to say that cognitive abilities, he's going to say that they depend on social and cultural factors. An example would be a researcher once went up to a Liberian farmer, and so he said to the farmer who was in the formal operational stage, said to him, "All Capel men are farmers. Mr. Smith is not a farmer. Is he a Capel man?" And the farmer, he asked, is going to say, "I do not know the man, I have not seen the man, therefore I do not know whether he's a farmer or not." So instead of relying on the logic of the formal operational stage, he's going to rely on his own like knowledge, his social, he's going to rely on the factors, the social and cultural factors instead. And now I'm going to be talking about parenting styles, which is a part of social and emotional development. And so, parenting styles, Diana Baumrid is going to talk about three different kinds of parenting styles. One being permissive parenting, which is a style where parents basically allow their kids to do whatever they want. They have minimal rules. They just can do as they please. So an example would be, okay, so a 17-year-old is a senior in high school and his parents are out one night and they tell him that he can have a few friends over or something, right? But he ends up having a whole party and they come home, they don't really get mad at him, they just accept it and say, "Oh, we were young once, it happened," He doesn't get any sort of punishment or anything. So most children that grow up with permissive parents are typically going to be disrespectful and immature. Now I'm going to be talking about authoritative parents, which is a type of parenting style where the parents are going to listen to the kids, but they're also going to set some rules. They're going to have some rules in place. So an example would be, let's say Lily is a senior in high school. She's 17, and the parents, they're going out for a night and they're saying, "Oh, like you can have a few of your friends over, that's okay with us, but we're out." They end up coming home middle of the night and they see that she's thrown a big party, that her friends invited a bunch of their friends and all that. And so they're going to say that they're disappointed in her, and they're going to tell her to clean up and that she's going to be grounded for 2 weeks, even though they might say, "Okay, yeah, I know it happens, I was young once, but you have to learn from your mistakes," right? And so these types of kids are typically going to grow to be they're going to be respectful of others, and they're going to be socially competent, those kinds of things. And the third style of parenting is I went over authoritative, yeah. Okay, authoritarian. So that stage of parenting is whenever the parents are super strict. They do not listen to their child whatsoever. They're just going to be strict and that's it. They're going to set some rules, and those, if the child doesn't listen to them, they're going to get harshly punished. So an example would be the same thing. Let's say Jack is a senior in high school, and he's the one day his parents are going out. They tell him like, "Oh, you cannot have anyone over. Nothing is allowed to happen while we're gone." But he decides to throw a party anyways. Let's say that he does that, and they come back, and they're going to be yelling their heads off at him. They're going to be very frustrated, and they're going to say, "Okay, you're grounded for 2 months." They're gonna take away his phone, maybe. They're gonna take away his gaming console. They're gonna take away everything and punish him as much as they can, because that's the style of authoritarian parents. And they're not going to listen to his view. They're just going to say like, "Don't talk back to me. Don't try and explain to me why this happened, because you're still gonna get punished regardless," right? They're going to say that. And so those types of children, they typically end up being they're going to be very moody mostly, yeah. Very moody and kind of withdrawn stuff, you know. So those are the three styles of parenting by Diana Baumrind is the one who conducted those. She's going to talk about those styles. I don't know if I mentioned her name earlier, so I figured I'd mention it now. If I already did, I'm sorry. So now I'm going to be talking about Lawrence Kohlberg's theory of moral development, which played a milestone in developmental psychology. There, he made these hypothetical moral dilemmas. One famous one is the Heinz dilemma, which is the situation where a woman in Europe had a rare form of cancer, and there was one drug in the town that was recently discovered that the doctor said might save her. But the druggist who made the drug, it cost him $200 to make it, but he was selling it for 10 times the price so that he could make money off it. So he was selling it for $2,000. The husband tries to raise money to get the drug for his wife because she's on the verge of death, and he only manages to make $1,000. He goes to the druggist and he's like, "Hey, can you reduce the price for me? Or can I pay you back later because my wife is near death?" And the druggist is like, "No, I made this drug and I deserve to make money from it." So the husband, Heinz, eventually just goes into the shop and steals the drug. And the question is going to be, was it okay that Heinz stole the drug? Kohlberg is going to present some moral dilemmas to a group of 72 boys from Chicago, and they consisted of ages 10, 13, and 16-year-olds. And basically, he noticed that their moral perspectives could be placed into 3 stages, which consist of the pre-conventional stage, the pre-conventional morality, conventional morality, and post-conventional morality. So pre-conventional morality is basically, this is typical of young children. They are going to base right and wrong off of, like, they're going to base it off of how it affects them. Like, what will the punishment be for them due to egocentrism? What is it going to be, a bad punishment? So young children would say that, "Oh, it was bad for Heinz to do that because now he's going to go to prison and he's going to be thought of badly because he stole." Now, moving into the next stage, the conventional morality, this is typical of adolescents and young adults. Their view of right and wrong is going to be perceived, it's going to be gathered from like the media, parents, and teachers. It's going to be based off of society and what will society think if you did this or that, you know? So they're going to say that it was wrong of Heinz to steal because he was breaking the law, and you should never be breaking the law, of course, you know? That's wrong. You shouldn't do that. But now moving into the next stage, which is post-conventional morality, this is typical of adults, and they are basically going to have their own view of right and wrong. They're not going to base it on society or someone telling them this is right, this is wrong. They're going to have their own perspective of it, kind of. and they're going to say those who were of post-conventional morality would say that it was okay for Heinz to steal the drug because his wife's right to live superseded the druggist's right of their property, right? Like, it was his wife was dying, so it was okay for him to steal the drug. And there are going to be some criticisms on Lawrence Kohlberg's theory of moral development. Carol Gilligan is going to make one on it, which is about how he did not include any women or females in his studies and experiments. He just used males. So she's going to say that it doesn't take into account the differences between males and females, which she's going to say that a male's morality is going to be more based on justice. Meanwhile, a female's sense of morality is going to be based more on the caring aspects, kind of. And there you have it. That was the review on developmental psychology. I'm so sorry if I stuttered a lot, but it was very hard for me to just say everything off the top of my head, as you know. And yeah, hopefully it was somewhat enjoyable and it was a good review. Thank you for watching.